Happy Thursday evening, afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're so excited for this. We've been talking about it for a really long time, Holly and I, and it's just really like fun that it's come together. And maybe depending on how this one goes, maybe we'll have some more workwear chats. We'll see. But yeah, thanks for joining us. This is What to Wear for Work. We are going to be chatting about professionalism, about dress code, both unspoken and spoken, safety, and like sensory sensitivities and how your clothing can impact that. We're going to be talking about confidence and hopefully touch on storytelling and visibility with our clothes and shifting and embracing new identities. So how this event actually came about is, so I am a coach, career coach, business coach, leadership coach, and I was doing an event with my friend Patricia Johnson, who is a branding strategist. We were doing an online event a few weeks ago, and we were talking about branding for entrepreneurs and how your aesthetic and the way that you show up visually impacts the vibe that you give off, the vibe that people get from you, and the way that they feel about working with you. So we only touched on it for like a second, but at the time I was chatting with Holly. I was getting to know Holly Chayes, my co-host here, who is a personal style coach and consultant. And every time we were talking, it was just like everything she was saying was just like, yes, I totally like that is so like values aligned with me. Or what she was saying was like totally blowing my mind. Like, wow, I've never heard that perspective before, but I like love it. Please tell me more. So I was so excited when we kind of like we're talking about this idea of like workwear, and the world is just changed. Like work culture is changing, the world is changing. Since COVID, since remote, hybrid, back to the office, like shifts are happening, and it's like, how do we even answer this question, like what to wear for work, unless you have a uniform? But a lot of the times you don't have a uniform. So how do we address that? So so that's kind of how this event came about, and really excited to introduce you to Holly and have her chat a little bit more about herself and dive right in.
Yeah, so like Lauren said, I'm a personal stylist and I work with people on their everyday genuine style. So I do a lot of work around what we wear and how it influences the lifestyle we live and how our lifestyle impacts what we can wear. So we got to talking about work and what to wear to work. And because so many of us spend so much of our time and our lives at work and in the clothing that we wear to work, and kind of looking at our days around work, but very influenced by it, I work with a lot of people and we end up working on their workwear just because that's such a huge part of our lives, whether it's intentional or not. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to talk about this and answer a ton of questions. Is there anything else we want to cover beforehand, or should we dive into
so
questions?
Just like we mentioned early on, like if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. We'll try to get to it. Again, this is being recorded. We're going to send out the replay after this along with the transcript. If you want to use the captions, you can click the CC button at the bottom of your screen. That's what I'm using. And yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, I'm gathering or trying to gather questions from the chat into kind of our working document. But if I miss your question, just put it in the chat again and like flag it so that it was not intentional to miss it. Awesome. Yeah, shall I?
No, Oh, are you?
Yeah. Okay. So the first question we have was a really good one about what to wear to an interview to make a first impression. And we were sort of debating whether or not this counts as like what to wear for work, because it's before you get the job. But if we look at workwear as kind of building a career and having a life, I think it works really nicely in here. So we're going with it. So the question is, how do you gauge what to wear to an interview for a good first impression? Is it better to align with the dress code of the company, or to show your more authentic style of dress? And so my first instinct is try for both. I think that if you can find out the dress code of the company before you work there, that would be great. And you can kind of, I think that gives you a lot of information about, one, whether or not you're going to enjoy working there, and two, what to wear for the job interview. But I think that's a really good, I love the what to wear to a job interview as a two-way test. I think a job interview is you're interviewing them and they're interviewing you, and ideally you're looking for a good match. And I think dress is a really valuable way to get a lot of information.
Yeah, so I will add that I had an interview like a few months ago, and was kind of like debating what am I going to wear? Is this dress too loud? Is the pattern too bright? Whatever. And so what I decided was that, it's 90 degrees out. I'm going to wear the dress. I'm going to bring the blazer with me, but I'm not necessarily going to wear it. I'm going to have it just in case I like want to put it on. But I was like, you know, do I want to show up with like my hairy legs and hairy armpits in a dress? And like, what are they going to think? What are they going to say? And I was really thinking like, actually, if they judge me for that, like if that's the reason they're not going to hire me, that's probably not a place that I want to work, since I'm looking for a place that is going to be open and accepting and like interested in like other viewpoints. And this was also a place that was like supporting artists. So like, right, it was just like, I was kind of like, I don't know, I feel like this is like you said, Holly, it's kind of like, it's good data for both of us to be like, hey, is this going to be a fit? Are you going to accept me for who I am and wearing this and presenting myself this way? And I can say like, I know that the person that I interviewed with was really impressed with me because she said that. And it didn't feel like I was being judged. It was like a good vibe. So in the end, I'm really happy with the decision that I made to wear that.
Yeah, I think being happy with the decision that you made for what you wear is really kind of the ultimate ideal, right?
Not.
Yeah. Do you have any tips for finding out the dress code before you work somewhere?
Oh yeah. So I mean, you can look at their marketing website.
Mm-hmm.
You can check out their social media.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that when you apply to a job, if you can have a conversation with somebody who works at the company, like that's probably your best bet, because you're going to get nuanced information that you can't get from, and that's like not just for dress code, that's like anything,
right.
That's like anything about the company and like how they operate and their culture. So yeah, those would be my tips.
Yeah, I would probably go with the informational interviews, and also this works for job interviews and like office wear, but it also works for things like weddings and receptions and parties, is like look at the architecture of the building and the general vibe of where you are and match your dress in that realm of things. So that kind of is one more tip for that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you want to talk about for dress code or how to dress for an interview?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody has questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We can definitely circle back.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, next question is about like how to navigate looking professional and also having a job that requires more physical labor. I think this also works in a job where you're office temperature is not within your control and not within your preferences. So if it's like too hot or too cold, I think this could help. The question is, I've typically had roles that involve more manual physical, labor intensive work. And I always get frustrated when I dress specifically for sweat and dirt and get weird looks like it's unprofessional. Would they rather I ruin my nicer office clothes? And so this is, I had a client I worked with who, I don't know her actual job description, but from my understanding, she basically was the project manager for historical building construction in New York City. So we're talking like old buildings, usually like very high-end offices or apartments or universities or like some club that's been there since like the many centuries ago. And part of her day was spent in the office, like in client meetings, talking with clients, presenting with clients, very expensive projects, very high-end clients, very professional expectations. And the other half of her day was on a construction site. And so she was like, how do I, over lunch, go from meeting to construction site? And we ended up doing a dark wash jean option with kind of a camisole as her base layer. So she could change her shoes and her top, but not have to change her pants or the camisole. So she would go from office shoes to boots and then like a blouse or something to like a flannel shirt. And that was one of the ways that we were able to accommodate these two like very disparate expectations of what to wear and like what's appropriate for the situation you're in.
Yeah, I think like it is like you've got to have good base layers, right? You've got to have base layers that you like can like use in multiple outfits. You can dress it up, you can dress it down. I also love the idea of like you know, being able to, if you can, like keep clothes at the office so that you don't have to kind of like schlep clothes back and forth, but like things that you can sort of like wear temporarily and then put back in your desk drawer or something. But yeah, I think the key there is like having really solid basics that you love and can dress up, dress down, you know, change out your jacket, change your shoes, change your accessories, and then like your whole outfit's transformed.
Yeah, so there's a question about the shoes in this particular situation. She preferred like a ballet flat or a loafer, so that's what she wore for the office. And then she had a pair of like construction boots, like high ankle, steel-toed, like solid boots that she could put on and then take the. So I think what she did was she might have worn the boots both to and from work, changed into the flats or the loafers for client meetings, and then wore the boots home and took the loafers home in her bag. So she wasn't having to carry boots. She could just wear them. But yeah, like in this particular situation, shoes are generally the trickiest part. And if you can get an outfit, build your outfit around your shoe, you'll have more options as to the flexibility of it.
What do you mean by that? Like to build an outfit around your shoe?
Yeah, so we usually, like whenever we're building an outfit, whether or not this is a conscious process that we're going through, we usually have a key piece that we start with. Like if you have a really nice silk scarf that you definitely want to wear one day, you'll start pulling like a sweater that works with it or a pant and a shoe. To build the outfit around the shoe basically means like start with the shoe. So like this is going in this outfit no matter what. Everything else of this outfit needs to work around this piece. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. A couple other suggestions for like labor intensive work, but also need to look nice is to look at like fast drying materials. So you're going to find these in like outdoor places like REI or Eastern Mountain Sports. They're going to have, it's like clothing that you could go hiking in, but you could also go to a meeting in. It's that like weird performance material, but like office look. So you can also kind of dig into that. Yeah. And I think I think we wanted to touch on kind of the concept of professionalism here, because it's so, it can be useful. It can also be very toxic.
Right. Right. So that's something that I talk a lot about in my coaching. Like if you've worked with me or you follow me, follow my content on social media and my emails, I talk about toxic professionalism, because so much of what we understand to be professional is rooted in oppressive systems, right? White supremacy, ableism, patriarchy, fat phobia, like just so many of those kind of intersectional oppressive systems that have sort of set this standard for us in workplaces. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing with clients is helping them like question those and challenge those and say, okay, here is what I have been taught is professional. Here is how I've been taught to do careers. And a lot of the times, like that isn't what our standards are. That isn't what we value. And so part of this process, I think, is like getting to excavate, right, and question, all right, this like wearing suits to work, wearing heels to work, like some of these very kind of old school ideas for how to present yourself as professional, or what embodying professionalism looks like. Like, I think it's a really important step in this process, like to question where those come from, if it feels good to us, and what we would feel good doing otherwise, right? So yeah, I mean, I could talk about that all day, but I think like being able to recognize where something is toxic professionalism, it is a BS standard that has been put on us by old school oppressive thinking, and like how we want to change, how we feel good in our own skin, feeling a sense of belonging rather than trying to fit in. Like that is really something that I am always trying to encourage people to question. And I think our wardrobe is one place that we can do that. And I actually think that is like a perfect segue into our next question.
There are like two questions from the chat that I think that tie in directly to this one that I just want to like touch on, rather than coming back to them. So the first question that I saw was tips for what materials we should search for that are hiking and office friendly, kind of that in between, like perfect mix of things. You're not so much looking for like fiber content. You want to look at the description of the clothing. So things that are like terms that we think of when we think of like athletic wear. So like moisture wicking, often they'll say like quick drying, or like wrinkle free. Like wrinkle free is not really what you're looking for, but it's that sort of description. You want like a descriptor of how the fabric performs under stress. I hope that answered the question. If it didn't, pop it again and we'll come back around. Awesome. And yes, there was another suggestion about having like a blouse or a scarf or a jacket in your office for those client meetings. And that can be a really, really, really good, some people call it like their emergency suit jacket, or like their emergency like professional jacket, and it just kind of hangs on the door, doesn't get used for months and months and months and months, and then it's the perfect thing and the perfect time. So if you have an office, that's also an option.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we were just talking about like kind of the difference between finding a sense of belonging,
Mhm.
like using your wardrobe as a tool to find a sense of belonging in your own identity and yourself, feeling good in your own skin versus trying to fit in, which feels forced and feels like icky and like very energy intensive. So this next question I really love. So they say, in past jobs, I've had the worst time trying to be professional enough while my autistic sensory issues like, makes it so that I feel like I have to refuse to wear pants other than leggings or sweatpants. And dresses and skirts just don't feel authentic to me most of the time. So I'm curious to hear your response to that, Holly.
This could take up the rest of the time, but I won't with this question because this is such a near and dear question because so we didn't talk about this, but I have a background in costume design for theater, and most of those clothes are designed specifically for the situation. So I have a very many stylists have a perspective on, like, you put clothes together, but the clothing is a finished piece and you can kind of alter it, but not really. I come from a background where you can change the fabric, you can change the cut, you can change the fit, you can change it all. Like, clothing is not finished. Like, you can adjust clothing, you can change it, you can make things. Like, the world is your oyster. Like, make clothing work. So I think about this from a very technical perspective. Like, there's a lot of, whether you identify as neurodivergent or not, whether you have skin sensitivities that you know about or not, whether you're just picky about your clothes or not, there are things that we don't like, and sometimes we try and force ourselves around them. Sometimes we accept them and avoid them. Sometimes we work with them. So in this question, we kind of have three like circles, and we're looking for that perfect Venn diagram in the center. So we're looking for clothes that fit the workplace expectations and requirements, clothes that don't trigger sensory things, like they feel really good and really safe, and that feel authentic. So the way you could kind of start is, we could look at, like, if this were a client, we could look at, do you want to try and find dresses and skirts that feel authentic to you? And we can look in that direction. We can look at, what is it about leggings and sweatpants that don't trigger you, and look for pants that appear more structured and professional, but feel just like leggings and sweatpants. So those are kind of the first two avenues I would start to explore. And then thinking also about, how can we signal professionalism in your outfit in a way that isn't pants? So, like, we can send alternative signals of professionalism, like a button-up shirt or a jacket, or jewelry accessories or shoe accessories. Like, where else do we have capacity to play with the outfits that you're wearing?
There was another thing that we talked about too, like, oh yeah, fit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was like
Yeah.
another thing that's like,
Yes.
how does it fit? How does it feel against your skin? Is it too tight? I'll let you elaborate on that.
Yeah. This is particularly for pants. So pants, from a technical perspective, are very difficult to fit correctly. And it's why it's so hard for so many of us to find pants that feel good. There are just so many little measurements that we don't think about when we're buying clothing, but that really impact how things feel on our bodies. So kind of a classic example is, if you work out and you have very muscular thighs, finding pants that fit your thighs and also your waist is, I won't say impossible, but it's really, really hard. Yes. So we can look at things like finding a tailor. We can find, if we have a tailor as an option, we can find pants that fit your thighs and then take them in at your waist. Or if you have sensory issues with pants, we can really investigate where those issues are coming up. Is it, for some people, it's when they sit down, the like creases that happen around your hips, because like how legs work, we have hips and joints, and making clothing fit around those is really complicated. So we can look at getting a better fit in that area. Some people it's actually like the knee. So we don't think about like the length of hip to knee and knee to ankle when we're buying pants. But if you are petite or particularly tall or just have different like proportions than the fit model used for the clothes, they can get really funky around the knee. So that's a whole other like genre of things we could get into as well.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, fit is, yeah, it's one of those things, like once you kind of figure out what works for you, you can keep using it, but like
Yes.
also our bodies change. Also,
Yes.
like, you know, we styles change. So yeah, it's one of those kind of like tricky things.
Yeah, it's also like, so if you don't know, sizing in clothing is not actually standardized, despite using the same numbers. The measurements associated with those numbers are not standardized between brands. So every brand has its own fit guidelines. Everyone has their own fit model. All of those measurements are like within parameters, but the parameters change brand to brand. So one of the biggest tips I give people is like, if you find a brand that fits you well, we can do a lot on the style side if that brand doesn't feel like your style, but it'll be easier to change how it's styled than it will be to change how it fits. So if you have a brand that you are close to the fit model in, try to buy that brand because you're going to have the best fit options. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I wrote a blog post once. I think it was titled something like 84 reasons your clothes don't fit, and it just basically walked through like all of the types of measurements that we have in our bodies that don't appear when we're going clothing shopping, but all of these measurements can impact how our clothing feels on our body.
That's cool.
So,
maybe we can share that blog post like
yes.
after with the, you know,
yeah,
in the follow-up email.
Absolutely. All
so
right.
Just doing a time check, we like actually have a ton of time for questions. So I know that we've been collecting these questions in our like, you know, shared doc, Holly and I. So yeah, so maybe we can tackle some of those. Again, feel free to keep putting questions in.
Yes.
If we don't get to them, we will figure out a way to answer, either like a recorded video that we share in the email after, or I don't know, maybe like another event or something, but we'll figure out a way to answer your questions.
We'll give you answers, yeah. Awesome. So the first chat question I grabbed was interested in learning how to balance complying with dress code, personal ethics around not wearing animal products, looking nice, and being comfortable in spaces that can be very hot and very cold in the same day. I feel this. So I think let's tackle this question backwards, and we'll start with the spaces that are very hot and very cold on the same day, because that's kind of the most straightforward. So the way to do this is to have layers, basically, and to have layers built into your outfit so that you look professional regardless of the layer variety that you're wearing. So this means having a base layer that looks professional all by itself. Usually that's done by some combination of like really good fit, colors, maybe some accessory options like jewelry. And then like another layer of like, maybe it's an overshirt, maybe it's a jacket, maybe it's a button up that you like can play around with how buttoned or unbuttoned you wear it. And then maybe there's even a third layer of like a shawl or a scarf or like a sweater or a cardigan, some sort of like even colder than normal cold. And then looking nice and being comfortable, the key to doing that in this kind of very layered approach is to build your layers intentionally and really paying attention to how does it look in each combination. So if anyone remembers like 2020, everyone was going remote, everyone was suddenly doing video calls. I was getting a ton of questions of, my outfit looks great, but on Zoom it looks really boring. And it was happening because all of the detail was on the lower half of your body. So your outfit looked great, just no one could see it because the detail wasn't within the frame of view. So we kind of want to take a similar idea of making sure that you're thinking about all of the permutations as you're changing your layers throughout the day. Then personal, ethics, and animal products comes down to when I'm working with people purchasing and we're like going shopping and like buying clothes to add to your wardrobe, one of the things we talk about is what your priorities are in terms of purchasing. And some people's priorities are absolutely no animal products, must be fair trade, must be sustainable. And those are like the top priorities. So that's the highest, that's the thing that we give the most interest and intensity to. Some people, that is, they want like all of those. Perfect world, nobody's getting hurt for our clothing, full stop. Unfortunately, that's not always true these days. And so that then becomes a question of, if it's number 3 in the order, we're going for that to be very high in the priorities, but maybe some sustainability has to be sacrificed because you're an oddly proportioned. So you are limited in how many brand options you have. This happens a lot with like petite or super tall shoppers, of like not many brands cater, so they can't prioritize sustainability as high. So we compensate that side by doing thrifting or pre-owned or consignment of, how can we balance both of these things? How can we obtain things that might not have been made as ethically as we would like in the most ethical way we can? So I hope that helps with that part of the question. And then complying with dress code. My first thing is always, is it a written dress code? If it's written, that's like one thing. If it's implied, that's actually usually a power question. And like what you can get away with and what is acceptable in your office environment generally has to do with how much power you have in that environment. So
I think another thing to add to that too is I worked somewhere that like had a large office, lots of people. There wasn't a dress code, but what my my coworkers would say in HR is, don't be the reason we need a dress code. Which I thought was a really like, okay, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
That's an interesting way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder how they would enforce that or suggest that.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Thanks for that question, Sue.
Yes, absolutely. Awesome. Oh yes. Also, dress codes for safety is like, absolutely. Please don't be unsafe in your clothing in your workplace. So Lauren asked, I guess I'm curious about showing up as yourself and standing up for yourself in some ways at work, especially in an environment that is disempowering and toxic. This is one of my favorite questions. I hate that anyone has to ask this, but this is one of my favorite things about clothing is how physical it is. Like we are literally putting things on our body and taking things off our body. And so this makes it a beautiful tool for being present and grounded, and it gives us opportunities to introduce transitions into our day. So when I work with people who like are not where they want to be working, like they have some really toxic and terrible situation, we often use clothing to kind of create an armor or a barrier around their workday. So we can create a work wardrobe that they only wear to work. They don't wear it at home. They don't wear on the weekends. And it's like, it is separate and apart from their everyday lives. And what this does is it means when they're getting dressed for work, they have the opportunity to kind of take a minute, gather all your resources, be like, this sucks. I don't want to be going where I'm going. I'm making a plan to be somewhere else, and there will be a different future someday. But for now, this is where we are. This is what we're doing. This is what we have to do. So that gives you the opportunity to kind of steel yourself in the morning and like go to work, get through your workday. And then the really important part of this is when you come home, change your clothing. So you are then creating that second moment of like, I am taking my work clothes off. I am home. I don't have to wear these anymore. I don't need my armor. It's all at the office or like wherever you're working. And what I really love about this is it then gives you a couple hours at the end of the day to envision a different future. You are wearing different clothes. You're not wearing what you wore to the office. So you can begin to imagine like, what would you want to wear? Like, what would feel empowering? Like, how do you want to be treated or spoken to? And how can you strategize towards that future?
I so appreciate that answer. I love how enthusiastic you are about it too. Because I think that even if you're not working in a toxic workplace, like even if let's say like you're working from home, it's so easy to just roll out of bed, open your computer and start the day, and then close the computer and continue the day and not really have that sort of like transition. And for some people, it is really helpful to have the like, okay, I'm putting on my work clothes, I'm doing the work thing, I'm going and, right. And like, and then at the end of the day, they change and they're like, here are my, feel better clothes, whatever that looks like for you. And so not saying there's like a right way or wrong way to do that. It's just, it kind of adds another boundary for yourself around your time and kind of mentally transitioning. Like if you're not commuting, or like post commute, having that transition into like, the relaxing part of your day. And also, I love how you said at the, after you sort of transition, you kind of have that space to imagine yourself and be imaginative and visionary about like where you're heading, where you're going. And I think that oftentimes so much of our energy is spent surviving in those like kind of toxic work environments that it is hard to get into that imaginary or imaginative sort of like place. So yeah, that's what I like work on with a lot of my clients, and taking baby steps to get there, and having fun with it. And yeah, but I love that answer, and I appreciate that.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we got that. The the power that clothing has to kind of signal to our brains who we are and what we're here to do, I don't think can be overstated, mostly because I talk about it all day.
Mm-hmm.
I need to find myself overstating it. So here we are. So this is a really good one. Super interested in the intersection of personal lifestyle and professional presentation. I'm aggressively low maintenance in my lifestyle, air dry your hair, no dry clean required clothes, etc. This has worked well in super casual tech environments, but I worry this comes across as doesn't give a crap. When it's for me, it's that I care about the work and the comfort sensory experience of my clothing. This is a great call, and it's interesting because it varies so much by industry. Like for tech, you can get away with it. No one cares that you don't care. But there are industries that's different. There are even roles like within tech that are different. It's really a kind of, it's almost something you have to like feel out depending on where you are and who you're with. I think this also can be offset in any direction by like competence, confidence, security in that you know what you're doing, you're there to do it, and you do a really good job at it. So I think this is a part style question and a part work environment question. Yeah.
And actually, while you talk about confidence, that's something that you and I talked about a few weeks ago, where I was saying, as I got more confident in myself, I started wearing bright colors. I started wearing big accessories. I started decorating my hearing aids. So I was like, calling attention to my hearing aids. I post about that online, and, and then you said something like, and actually like confidence can look totally different, and not bright colors, and very neutral colors, and very like kind of easy breezy style, like totally different than my bold, like loud patterns. And so I think the important piece here is like, if you feel good in what you're wearing, you feel confident in it.
Yeah.
That's going to change. Excuse me. As I choke. That's going to change how you present yourself. And at that point, like the clothing matters less, because you it's not like the clothes are wearing you are wearing the clothes.
Yes, there's like, it's a cliche, but it's also true of like, if you are confident enough, you can wear anything, and if you're not confident, you can't wear anything. So there's that. So this I think is tying back to when we were talking about like physical work environments, but also like marketing and client meetings. I work in video production. Sometimes I'm in marketing client meetings. Sometimes I'm lugging equipment to trucks and crawling under furniture with power cables. And so, yeah, this comes back to like, I think the first question here is, do you generally know what kind of day you're having, and having consistency between your types of days. So like, if you think about what you wear to work on a spectrum, and you have like crawling under furniture days on one end of the casual, get clothes dirty, hard wearing clothes spectrum, and the other side is like marketing and client meeting days, can you kind of have a bridge style between the two, so you're feeling less kind of pulled in two directions, so less like dual lives and more like two aspects of one job? So that's what I would also add there. We touched on hiking office material earlier. Shoe brands for work that aren't leather or plasticky. What styles are versatile? I wear loafers a lot, but they look clunky. I don't think we have time to get into specific brands here. But the first thing I would say, if you're dealing with kind of clunky and also not wanting things to feel plasticky, I would actually recommend, if it's an option, to like go to a department store and look at all of the options. I think sometimes we look for a brand and we only see a couple styles available, and we're not quite like, we don't have a broad enough like view to be able to figure out like the loafers that we actually like, or the loafers that don't feel plasticky to us. So I think that's where I would start there. And I'm kind of like, I know we're coming up on time, so I'm like wanting to get to as many questions as possible.
Yeah, and again, if we don't get to them, we will figure out a way and make sure that your question gets answered one way or another.
Yes. Is there anything that you would call totally wrong, like a big no-no? Because of how many types of jobs there are, and because of how many like workplaces there are, I think I'm going to say no, unless it's a safety hazard. There are definitely like industry expectations for every industry. There are definitely like no-nos for certain workplaces. And this is not a satisfying answer, and I'm very aware of it. But there's so many types of work that, yeah.
I would also
have a way to suggestion.
So yes, safety.
Yeah.
The other thing that is like, again, just a strong opinion here, is if your clothing causes harm.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is like, you wear something on your clothing that is like a message that is like, you know, directly offending whole groups of people, or, you know, that's like a workplace can be casual, and you also don't have to like have things on your shirt that shows, you know, that you, like, it's one thing to support a cause, it's another to like have complete disregard for whole groups of people that would be harmed by like receiving the message that's on your clothing. So another thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. I will also say here, kind of thinking about this as a question of like not wanting to step a foot wrong in a new environment. I would say that it's generally easier to begin a working relationship, like a employee,
like a new job,
job, or a new client, or a new type of business, or a new industry, by starting to dress a little more formal than the kind of baseline, because you can make it more casual as the relationship gets more solid. And most people, at least in the US, in most like office environments, see that as a warming up to, and like a getting more familiar, as opposed to if you start a little casual and try to make it more formal and kind of dress up or dress better after you have an established relationship, it takes a little more finesse for that to not come across as distancing, or as like sometimes people feel that as like coming off as like you think you're better than them now, or like it's a weird dynamic. And it's actually one that I deal with a lot of clients, because most people come to me, they want to start dressing better, but they're like, what are my friends going to think? Like, what's my partner going to think? What's my family? Like, how do I navigate dressing how I want to dress when I've been more casual than I really want, but it's what I've been doing. So that's where I would start there, is if you're like kind of unsure, going a little more formal, not like, if everyone's in tech, like jeans and a t-shirt, you go for a 3-piece suit, you're making quite a statement. You can make the statement, like you can pull that off, absolutely, but a little more formal is generally easier to kind of come back to baseline in.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So just doing a time check.
Yes.
We are going to start wrapping up. But the questions that we didn't get to, Holly and I are going to figure out a way, again, to either like record a video or type up an answer and make sure that you get these questions answered.
Yes.
So yeah, would you like to kind of share some takeaway tips for the folks?
Yes. Yeah, I think that last one is actually a really good one, is like, if you're in a new environment, dressing a little more formal and then getting more casual as your relationships get established is easier than vice versa. The other thing that I really want people to understand is that time in personal style as it relates to identity solves a lot of problems. So trying to change your entire style overnight, kind of like a teen movie montage type thing, has a lot of identity shifts and backlash and personal backlash and reverting to mean and like upper limit, call it what you want, but like there's a lot of stuff wrapped up in there. So if you can start slow, if you can take steady steps and continuously improve, you're gonna have an easier time of it overall. So I always like to start with kind of what you're working from and start where you are, make adjustments as time continues. Yeah. Those are kind of the two like overarching style tips that I would give. And then kind of on the practical level, especially if you have skin sensitivities, especially if comfort is a really important piece of your clothing, pay attention to the fiber content of your clothes. So clothing sold in the US and I think the EU and I think most other places requires like a tag inside of it that tells you the fiber contents as well as all of the laundering instructions. So if you start to pay attention to what is on that tag for the clothes that you really love, you can start to pick up trends. This is really common if like you are allergic to wool, but you didn't really know it, but like some things work, but some things don't, and you're not really sure what the difference is. And you can start to see those fibers keep showing up in the pieces you love or the pieces you don't love. Most people don't know about that little tag, and I really like it. And then another secret is like tailoring and altering your clothes is one of the best ways you can look better. Like if you can take your like clothing fits off the rack, but it like doesn't fit perfectly. And so small adjustments, both in terms of like fit, but also in terms of personality. Like if you did not like grow up sewing or have access to it, like the idea that you can change all the buttons on a jacket is like, some people are like, yeah, of course you can. And some people are like, I never knew you could. So it's always one of those things that I like to remind people that like you can change the clothes that you buy and you can make them work better for you. So I think that's my tips.
Awesome. Cool. So
Yes.
you are welcome to stay in touch with us. We would love that.
Yes.
So again, I'm Lauren Goldberg. You can follow me at Lauren Goldberg Coaching on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I do exploratory sessions for anybody who's interested in career transition, leadership, small business coaching. Holly, how can people stay in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm not super active on social. My most in touch way of staying in touch is my email list, which you can find on my website, which is whowearswho.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, again, you're going to hear from us with this
Yes.
recording. There was just so much that we covered and we didn't even get to everything. So yeah, hopefully this was helpful.
Yes.
And definitely check out Holly's website. She's got a ton of resources, a ton of free like ebooks and stuff. It's so like I've learned so much just from like being in her, being in her community and her ether. So yeah, I just like so grateful to have Holly here join me, and so grateful for all of you to come hang out with us on this Thursday night. And yeah, you will hear from us again soon.
Yes.
Happy Thursday.
Thank you
Take
for
care.
being here.
Thank you, ladies, for the wonderful session. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.